Captain Hana gripped the controls of her transport ship as it flew through the dangerous asteroid field. Her knuckles were white, but her hands stayed perfectly steady, even as massive rocks the size of buildings spun past her ship at deadly speeds. The other pilots in the galaxy would have been screaming in terror by now, but Hana just smiled a cold smile that would have made any alien run away in fear. Behind her sat 20 of Earth's most dangerous soldiers. Their faces were calm and relaxed, like they were going to a picnic, instead of the most important meeting in galactic history. Lieutenant Minho was cleaning his rifle for the 10th time that day, while Sergeant Yuna read through the mission files on her tablet. None of them looked worried about flying through space that killed most alien pilots just by existing. The Galactic Council had finally agreed to meet with humans after 3 long years of war that had destroyed entire star systems and left billions dead. The aliens were tired of losing every single battle they fought against these terrifying creatures from the Deathworld called Earth. Now they wanted to talk about peace, but everyone knew this meeting could just as easily start an even bigger war. Hana looked at her scanner and saw the meeting place ahead. Koreth Station was built inside a dead moon that had been hollowed out and turned into a massive diplomatic center. It was supposed to be neutral ground where different species could meet safely, but nothing felt safe when humans were involved. The station was huge enough to hold 1 million beings, and it floated in empty space like a metal planet. As her ship got closer, Hana could see dozens of alien vessels keeping their distance from her transport. They were afraid to get too close to the human ship, even though this was supposed to be a peaceful meeting. She could almost feel their terror through the cold vacuum of space. These aliens had heard the stories about what humans could do, and they believed every terrifying word. The docking process was supposed to be simple, but the alien traffic controller's voice was shaking so badly that Hana could barely understand the landing instructions. She guided her ship into the docking bay with the same casual skill that would have impressed alien pilots if they weren't too scared to watch. The landing was so smooth it felt like they had never been moving at all. When the ship's door opened, Lieutenant Minho stepped out first. His hand rested casually on his weapon, but he moved with the fluid grace of a predator that could strike faster than the eye could follow. Behind him came the rest of the human team, each one radiating the same deadly calm that marked all children of Earth. They walked like they owned the universe, and in many ways they did. The docking bay was enormous, but it felt empty because most of the alien workers had fled when they heard humans were coming. The few brave souls who stayed to do their jobs kept their distance and avoided making eye contact. They had all heard what happened to aliens who looked at humans the wrong way. Some said the humans could kill with just a glance. Sergeant Yuna noticed a group of young alien maintenance workers hiding behind some cargo containers. She gave them a small wave and a smile that was meant to be friendly, but the youngsters nearly fainted from terror. What they saw was not friendliness, but the casual confidence of an apex predator that could tear them apart without breaking a sweat. The human team walked through the station's corridors like they were taking a pleasant stroll. The hallways were wide enough for the largest alien species to move comfortably, but they seemed narrow when filled with human presence. Other beings pressed themselves against the walls as the delegation passed. Some covered their eyes as if looking at humans might kill them. Ambassador G1 led the group with the same diplomatic training that had served Earth well in peaceful negotiations, but her movement pattern screamed danger to every alien instinct. She had been chosen for this mission because she could speak 17 alien languages and had studied xenopsychology for 20 years. But more importantly, she could kill with her bare hands, and every alien could sense it. The station had been designed as a symbol of galactic peace and cooperation. Ancient stone walls were covered with beautiful carvings that told the story of thousands of years without major wars between species. The artwork showed different aliens working together, trading knowledge and building a better future for everyone. But all of that had changed when humans arrived in the galaxy. Children of various species hid behind their parents as the human delegation passed through the common areas. Some had never seen humans before, and only knew them from the terrifying stories their parents whispered at night. These were stories of beings who could survive in environments that would kill anyone else in minutes, and who fought wars with a brutality that made even the most violent species sick. The meeting chamber was at the heart of the station, and it was massive enough to hold representatives from every species in the galaxy. The ceiling stretched up so high it disappeared into shadows, and the walls were lined with viewing galleries where thousands of beings could watch the proceedings. The chamber had been built to inspire awe and respect. But today it just felt like a tomb. As they entered the great hall, Hana could see alien representatives from dozens of different worlds. Some looked like giant insects, while others resembled walking plants or living crystals. They came in every size and shape imaginable, but they all had one thing in common. They were all terrified of the 20 humans who had just walked into their sacred meeting place. The seating arrangement had been planned for months with careful attention to each species, social customs, and physical needs. But no one had known how to prepare for humans. Every chair looked too fragile to hold beings who had evolved on a world where gravity could crush most aliens, and every surface seemed too delicate for creatures who could accidentally break things just by touching them. Representative Kyung-ho from the Terran Defense Force took his assigned seat, and the reinforced chair creaked under his weight. Even though he was considered small by human standards, his casual movement as he sat down generated enough force to shatter the bones of most species in the galaxy, but he moved with such control that he looked almost gentle. The other humans spread out through the chamber, taking their designated positions with military precision. Each one was a diplomat, scientist, or cultural expert, but they were also soldiers who had survived the worst war in galactic history. Their presence changed the entire atmosphere of the room from one of hope and cooperation to one of barely controlled violence. Ambassador Jiwon stepped up to the speaker's platform that had been built to accommodate beings from every known species. Her footsteps echoed through the silent chamber as thousands of alien eyes watched her every movement. She represented not just Earth, but the entire human species, and everyone in the room knew that her words could determine whether the galaxy would have peace or face total destruction. The moment had finally arrived when the children of the Deathworld would speak to the civilizations they had been fighting. The meeting of Deathworld Titans was about to begin, and nobody knew if the galaxy would survive what came next. The silence stretched on, as species that had ruled space for millions of years waited to hear what the most dangerous predators in the universe had to say about peace. 3 years earlier, Commander Tyke was having what he thought would be a boring day, exploring empty space near the edge of human territory. His ship, the UES Horizon, was on a routine patrol mission, looking for new planets that might be suitable for human colonies. The crew was relaxed, and most of them were playing cards or reading books when the sensors started screaming about something very strange. Lieutenant Sora was monitoring the long-range scanners when she detected a massive energy signature that didn't match anything in their databases. The readings were completely alien, but they showed clear signs of advanced technology and what looked like a ship in serious trouble. Commander Tyke made the decision that would change galactic history forever. He ordered his crew to investigate and offer assistance. The alien vessel was unlike anything humans had ever seen before. It looked like someone had grown a ship instead of building it with organic curves and surfaces that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. The hull was made of some kind of living metal that shifted colors as they watched, and the whole thing was about 3 times larger than any human ship they had ever built. As they got closer, the sensors showed that the alien ship was badly damaged and losing power fast. There were life signs aboard, but they were getting weaker by the minute. Commander Tyke didn't hesitate for even a second. He ordered his crew to prepare for a rescue operation, even though they had no idea what kind of beings they might find inside the strange vessel. The aliens were called Villani, and they were the most peaceful species in the galaxy. They had never known war or violence beyond minor disagreements over trading routes. Their entire civilization was built around commerce and cultural exchange, and they had been exploring space for over 2,000 years without ever meeting anything that wanted to hurt them. Captain Mirai of the Villani trading vessel Soft Whisper had been unconscious when the humans first boarded her ship. She woke up to find strange bipedal creatures moving through her corridors with a fluid grace that made her survival instincts scream in absolute terror. These beings moved like predators, born and bred for hunting and killing, and every step they took radiated barely contained violence. Dr. Kyung was the first human the Villani captain actually saw up close. The ship's medical officer was trying to be as gentle as possible as she examined The injured alien, but even her softest touch left bruises on Captain Mirai's fragile skin. The Volani had evolved on a low-gravity world with no dangerous predators, and their bodies were as delicate as flower petals. What terrified Captain Mirai, even more than the human strength, was their eyes. Human eyes were the eyes of hunters that had spent millions of years tracking prey across dangerous landscapes. They moved constantly, scanning for threats and opportunities with an intelligence that was both brilliant and utterly ruthless. The Volani had never seen anything like them in all their travels. The human rescue team worked with mechanical efficiency that would have been impressive if it hadn't been so frightening. Sergeant Day secured the ship while Corporal June repaired the damaged systems and Private Yunbi helped evacuate the injured crew members. Each human seemed to know exactly what to do without needing orders, and they moved together like a pack of perfectly coordinated predators. Captain Mirai tried to thank Dr. Kyung for her help, but the human woman's smile was somehow more terrifying than her frown. The Volani could sense that this creature was capable of incredible violence, but was choosing to be helpful instead. It was like being rescued by a barely tamed monster that could decide to eat you at any moment. The situation became much worse when the pirates arrived. The Krellian raiders were the most feared criminals in that sector of space, and they specialized in attacking damaged vessels and selling the survivors into slavery. They had been tracking the Volani ship for days, waiting for it to become completely helpless before moving in for the kill, when the pirate ships appeared. On the sensors, Captain Mirai and her crew prepared to die. They knew the Krellians would torture them for information about other Volani trade routes before finally killing them. The pirates had done this hundreds of times before, and no one had ever been able to stop them. But they had never encountered humans before. Commander Tyke didn't even bother calling for backup when he saw the 3 pirate vessels approaching his position. He simply ordered his crew to battle stations and began planning their attack. The human response was so fast and efficient that the pirates didn't even have time to send a surrender signal before the first shots were fired. The space battle lasted exactly 14 minutes and 37 seconds. The human ship moved through the pirate formation like a shark swimming through a school of fish. Every shot was perfectly aimed and every maneuver was calculated to cause maximum damage while avoiding any return fire. The pirates had superior numbers and heavier weapons, but they might as well have been throwing rocks at a hurricane. Sergeant Day led the boarding party that captured the pirate flagship. Moving through the enemy ship in full combat gear, he looked like death itself, walking through the corridors. The pirates tried to fight back, but they were used to dealing with peaceful traders, not apex predators who had evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill them. The pirate captain was a massive Krellian warrior who had never lost a fight in his entire career. He stood over 3 meters tall and weighed as much as a small vehicle. His natural armor could stop most energy weapons and his claws could cut through steel. But when Sergeant Day grabbed him by the throat and lifted him off the ground, the pirate captain discovered what real fear felt like. Captain Mirai watched in horrified fascination as the human sergeant ended the pirate threat with his bare hands. The violence was swift and efficient without any wasted motion or unnecessary cruelty. It was the kind of perfect lethality that could only come from a species that had been shaped by millions of years of constant warfare against a hostile environment. When the battle was over, the human crew returned to their rescue operation as if nothing unusual had happened. They finished repairing the Volani ship, helped transfer the injured to their medical bay, and even shared some of their food supplies with their new alien friends. But Captain Mirai and her crew could not forget what they had witnessed. The news of this first contact spread through Volani space, faster than light-speed communication systems could carry it. Within days, every major civilization in the galaxy had heard about the terrifying new species that treated deadly space pirates like minor inconveniences. The humans had introduced themselves to galactic society by casually demonstrating that they were the most dangerous beings anyone had ever encountered. What made the story even more frightening was that the humans seemed genuinely confused by the aliens' reaction to their rescue operation. They had simply done what any decent person would do when they found someone in trouble. But their casual display of overwhelming violence had shattered the Volani's entire worldview and introduced a new kind of fear to the galaxy. The Galactic Council received Captain Mirai's report with growing horror as they realized that they were no longer the dominant forms of life in their own galaxy. These humans were not just another spacefaring species, they were apex predators who had somehow developed intelligence and technology while remaining the most lethal hunters the universe had ever produced. Ambassador. Jiwon remembered reading that first contact report as she prepared for today's meeting. The fear in Captain Mirai's words had been the beginning of 3 years of war that had nearly destroyed galactic civilization. Now she stood ready to address the same council that had declared war on humanity based on that single terrifying encounter with the children of Earth. Admiral Hyan of the Council Defense Force was the first alien leader brave enough to speak the words that everyone was thinking. If they could not defeat these Deathworld predators, then perhaps they should learn from them instead. The galaxy faced threats that their peaceful evolution had never prepared them to handle, and they had just discovered the perfect teachers. The silence in the great chamber stretched on for long minutes as thousands of alien minds wrestled with a concept that went against everything they believed about civilization. For millions of years, the galaxy had been built on cooperation, trade, and peaceful coexistence, but now they were being asked to embrace the children of violence itself. Ambassador Jiwon rose from her seat and walked to the speaker's platform with the same fluid grace that had terrified aliens for 3 years. But now her movement seemed less threatening and more protective. She represented a species that had spent the last year learning that the galaxy contained wonders worth protecting from those who would destroy them. The proposal she presented was radical, beyond anything the Council had ever considered. Instead of continuing a war that was destroying both sides, she suggested a new form of galactic civilization, one that acknowledged the reality of humanity's nature, while finding ways to channel their deadly gifts toward protection rather than conquest. The first test of this new alliance came sooner than anyone expected. Long-range sensors detected something that made even the humans pause in concern. A massive fleet was approaching from the void between galaxies, moving at speeds that should have been impossible, and broadcasting signals that spoke of hunger and endless consumption. The Devourers had consumed entire galaxies in their journey across the cosmic void. They were beings of pure malevolence that existed only to feed on the life force of other species. They had turned 1,000 civilizations into empty husks, and now they were coming for the Milky Way with appetites that could never be satisfied. Captain Minseo commanded the first joint fleet in galactic history. Human warships flew alongside alien vessels in formations that would have been impossible just weeks earlier. The aliens provided advanced technology and superior numbers, while humans contributed tactical expertise and a level of aggressive determination that could turn any battle. The enemy fleet was unlike anything either side had ever encountered. Ships that seemed to be made of living darkness swept through space like hungry shadows, while smaller craft that looked like metallic insects swarmed around them in numbers that blocked out the stars. The Devourers had perfected the art of warfare over millions of years. Lieutenant Hyunsu piloted his fighter through the enemy formation, while alien wingmen struggled to keep up with his aggressive flying style. The partnership was awkward at first, but desperation made for quick learning as both sides realized they needed each other to survive the onslaught. The battle raged across multiple star systems as the joint forces tried to slow the Devourer advance. Human boarding parties fought through environments that would have killed most aliens instantly, while alien support ships provided the firepower needed to crack the invaders. Advanced defenses. Sergeant Yunji led a mixed squad of human marines and Keltharian shock troops through the corridors of a captured Devourer vessel. The aliens had finally learned to appreciate human combat skills when they saw them used against a common enemy instead of against themselves. The fighting was unlike anything either side had experienced before. The Devourers were not just technologically advanced, they were also perfectly adapted for warfare in ways that made even humans look peaceful by comparison. Their very touch could drain the life from organic beings, while their weapons fired streams of pure entropy. Dr. Sujin worked alongside alien scientists to find weaknesses in Devourer technology. Her human intuition for finding tactical advantages combined with alien analytical skills to create breakthrough discoveries that neither side could have achieved alone. The partnership was proving more effective than anyone had dared hope. The turning point came when Captain Jaehyun discovered that the Devourers had a fatal weakness. They could not understand the concept of sacrifice for others. Their entire existence was based on self-preservation and consumption, so they could not predict or counter tactics that involved willing self-sacrifice. The final assault required everything both sides could bring to bear. Human assault ships carried alien scientists into the heart of the Devourer fleet, while alien capital ships provided covering fire that lit up entire sectors of space. The coordination was perfect, despite the fact that most of the participants had been mortal enemies just months before Commander Taman led the boarding party that reached the Devourer command ship. His team included warriors from a dozen different species, all working together to plant the quantum charges that would destroy the enemy fleet. The diversity that had once been a source of conflict had become their greatest strength. The explosion that followed could be seen from 50 light-years away, as the Devourer fleet was consumed by the same hungry darkness they had used to devour so many other civilizations. The threat that had consumed entire galaxies was finally stopped by an alliance that should never have been possible. When the battle was over, both sides understood that the galaxy had changed forever. The 3-year war between humans and the Council had been a brutal education for everyone involved, but it had also forged the strongest military alliance in cosmic history. Admiral Sunwoo stood on the bridge of her flagship and looked out at the mixed fleet that surrounded her. Human ships flew in formation with vessels from dozens of different worlds, and for the first time in years, she felt something that might have been peace. The victory celebration on Korath Station brought together beings who had been trying to kill each other just weeks before human soldiers shared drinks with Keltharian warriors, while Volani traders swapped stories with Terran merchants. The transformation was so complete it seemed almost miraculous. Ambassador Jiwan watched alien children playing with human children in the station's garden areas and realized that fear had been replaced by something much more powerful. Trust was growing between species that had thought such cooperation was impossible. The galaxy now had protectors, who understood that some threats required the kind of response that only Deathworld predators could provide. The humans were no longer the monsters hiding in the dark corners of space. They were the guardians standing watch against the things that lurked in the spaces between stars. General Wanho established the new Joint Defense Command, with representatives from every species that had survived the war. The humans would provide the tactical expertise and fighting spirit, while the aliens contributed technology resources and the kind of civilized wisdom that came from millions of years of peaceful development. The meeting of Deathworld Titans had not destroyed galactic civilization. Instead, it had given that civilization the strength to survive anything the universe could imagine. The children of Earth had found their purpose as protectors rather than conquerors, and the galaxy was safer because of it. Years later, when new threats emerged from the cosmic void or from dimensions beyond normal space, the response was always the same. A joint fleet would assemble with human tactical brilliance supported by alien technology, and together they would face whatever darkness dared to threaten the worlds they had sworn to protect. The universe had learned that some problems required solutions that could only come from a species that had evolved in hell and emerged as angels of war. The meeting of Titans had become the foundation of a new age where the galaxy's greatest predators had become its most devoted guardians. When news of the human encounter reached the Galactic Council headquarters on Zentara Prime, panic spread through the ancient halls faster than wildfire. The emergency session was called within hours, and representatives from hundreds of worlds abandoned their normal duties to attend what many believed would be the most important meeting in galactic history. High Chancellor Veltar of the Zentaran Republic had lived for over 400 years and had seen every kind of crisis the galaxy could produce, but nothing had prepared him for the reports coming from Volani space. These humans were not just another aggressive species. They were something far worse. They were perfect predators who had somehow developed advanced technology. The first emergency debate lasted for 3 straight days as species after species shared their analysis of the human threat. The Keltharian Empire brought military experts who had studied every known form of warfare. The Christine Collective provided psychological profiles that painted humans as barely controlled monsters. The Hive networks offered biological data that made everyone in the chamber feel sick with fear. General Thekran of the Keltharian Imperial Fleet stood before the assembled representatives with his forearms crossed in a gesture of absolute certainty. He had commanded fleets that conquered entire star systems, and his tactical genius was legendary throughout the galaxy. But when he spoke about the human threat, his voice shook with something no one had ever heard from him before. Genuine fear. The Keltharian analysis was simple and terrifying. Humans represented an existential threat to every form of life in the galaxy. They had evolved on a world so hostile that it had created the perfect killing machines disguised as intelligent beings. Their rescue of the Villani ship had been a demonstration of power that proved they could destroy any military force the galaxy could assemble. Dr. Yathara from the Peaceful Research Institute tried to argue for a diplomatic solution. She had spent her entire career studying aggressive species and finding ways to integrate them into galactic society. But even she had to admit that humans were unlike anything. In their databases, these beings had evolved past the point where normal diplomacy could work. The vote was almost unanimous when it came. 27 different species agreed that humanity represented a clear and present danger that had to be eliminated before they could spread beyond their home system. Only 3 small colonies voted against the war resolution, and they were quickly overruled by the major powers who controlled galactic policy. Admiral Sun Wu received the declaration of war while she was having breakfast in her quarters on Luna Base. The message had traveled across half the galaxy to reach Earth, and it contained the official statement that humanity was now considered an enemy of all civilized life. She read it twice then, calmly poured herself another cup of coffee. The human response was not what the aliens expected. Instead of panic or desperate pleas for mercy, Earth simply began preparing for war. Admiral Sun Wu called an emergency meeting of the Terran Defense Council, and within 6 hours every human military unit in known space had received new orders. What the aliens did not understand was that humans had been preparing for interstellar war since the day they first looked up at the stars. Every human child grew up knowing that space was dangerous and that Earth might someday have to fight for its survival. The declaration from the Galactic Council was not a surprise. It was confirmation of what humans had always expected. The Keltharian Empire assembled the largest military fleet in galactic history, over 300 warships from dozens of different species, all equipped with the most advanced weapons technology available. Their commanders were confident that sheer numbers would overwhelm these primitive Deathworlders who had barely begun to explore. Space Captain Bora commanded the human patrol squadron assigned to the Proxima system. Her 12 ships were conducting routine exercises when the massive alien fleet dropped out of hyperspace. The odds were 25-1 against the humans, but Captain Bora just smiled the same cold smile that had terrified aliens across the galaxy. The Battle of Proxima became the stuff of nightmares for every alien military academy that survived the war. What should have been a quick demonstration of superior firepower turned into a massacre that redefined what space combat could look like. The human ships moved through the alien formation like dancers performing a deadly ballet. Admiral Kethmos of the Keltharian fleet had fought in over 50 major battles and had never experienced anything like what happened at Proxima. The human vessels performed maneuvers that should have killed their crews with acceleration forces, but somehow, the pilots kept fighting while pulling turns that would liquefy most alien bodies. The alien ships were larger and more heavily armed, but they had been designed by species that valued safety and crew comfort over combat effectiveness. Their weapons were powerful but slow to target, and their hulls were built to withstand accidents. Not the focused fury of predators bred for war. Human tactics made no sense to alien military minds. The Deathworld ships would accelerate directly toward enemy vessels, as if planning to ram them, then suddenly reverse course at the last second, while firing volleys of missiles that seemed to think for themselves. The coordination was so perfect, it looked like the 12 ships shared a single mind. Lieutenant Hosung piloted his fighter through the enemy formation, with the casual skill of someone who had learned to fly in asteroid fields and solar storms. His ship danced between alien weapons that moved too slowly to track him, while his own guns found weak points in enemy armor with surgical precision. The aliens tried every tactical formation in their databases, but nothing worked against opponents who fought like living weapons. The humans anticipated every move, countered every strategy, and seemed to know exactly where their enemies would be before the aliens knew it themselves. When the battle ended 6 hours later, the entire Keltharian fleet had been destroyed, while all 12 human ships were still operational. The wreckage field stretched across thousands of kilometers of space and contained the remains of what had been the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever assembled. Captain Bora sent a simple message back to Earth: mission accomplished, enemy fleet eliminated, all human vessels returning to base. The casual tone of her report somehow made the victory even more terrifying to anyone who intercepted the transmission. News of the disaster spread through Council space faster than their fastest ships could travel. Species that had never known defeat suddenly understood what it meant to face an enemy that was genuinely superior in every aspect of warfare. The calls for immediate surrender began within hours of the first reports. But the war was just beginning. The humans had proven they could win battles, but now they had to prove they could win a war against an entire galaxy. The next phase would test both sides in ways that no one could have imagined. General Wanho began planning the human response to what would surely be an escalation from the surviving Council forces. He knew that Earth faced enemies on every side, but he also knew that his species had advantages that no alien military analyst could truly understand. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you declared war on a Deathworld, and its children were ready to remind the universe why they had earned their reputation as the most dangerous predators ever to reach for the stars. 3 years of constant warfare had taught the galaxy a terrible lesson about what happened when evolution had unlimited time and unlimited pressure to create the perfect predator. Dr. Narai stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council, knowing that her words might be the last chance to prevent the complete destruction of civilized space. The Great Assembly Hall was packed with representatives from every surviving species in the galaxy. Many of their worlds had been turned into battlefields where human forces demonstrated new forms of warfare that defied everything. The aliens thought they knew about combat. The fear in the chamber was so thick it could be cut with a knife. Dr. Narai was Earth's leading expert on alien biology, and she had spent the last year studying every species that had declared war on humanity. Her research had revealed something that chilled her to the bone. The aliens were not evil or stupid. They were simply the product of evolution that had never faced a serious challenge. She began her presentation with a simple hologram of planet Earth floating in the center of the chamber. The blue and green world looked peaceful and beautiful from space, but Dr. Narai knew that appearances could be deceiving. This planet was a nightmare disguised as paradise, and it had created the most dangerous species the universe had ever seen. The first shock came when she revealed Earth's basic environmental data. The gravity was nearly twice what most species could survive, and the atmospheric pressure would crush beings from low-gravity worlds. The temperature swings were extreme enough to kill most aliens within hours, and the weather patterns regularly generated storms that could flatten entire cities. But the real horror was not the macro environment. It was the microscopic warfare that shaped every aspect of life on the Deathworld. Earth was covered in organisms that had been locked in an evolutionary arms race for over 3 billion years. Every form of life on the planet was either predator or prey, and usually both at the same time. The bacteria alone would have wiped out most galactic civilizations within days. Human bodies hosted trillions of microorganisms that existed in a delicate balance of cooperation and competition. Many of these tiny life forms produced toxins that could kill alien species in minutes, but humans had evolved alongside them and turned them into allies. Dr. Nare showed images of Earth plants that looked innocent enough until she explained their defense mechanisms. Some produced chemicals that would dissolve alien flesh, while others generated electrical charges strong enough to stop a Keltharian heart. Many Earth flowers were more dangerous than the deadliest weapons in the galactic arsenal. The animal life was even worse. The oceans contained predators that could swallow alien spacecraft whole, while the land was home to creatures that hunted in packs with intelligence that rivaled most galactic species. Even the smallest Earth animals possessed reflexes and strength that made them dangerous to beings from peaceful worlds. Humans had not just survived in this nightmare environment, they had conquered it completely. They had climbed to the top of the most competitive food chain in the known galaxy, and then developed intelligence advanced enough to reach for the stars. Their evolution had been guided by 4 billion years of constant warfare against everything around them. The aliens began to understand why human children played games that would be considered advanced military training. By most species, human entertainment involved simulated combat scenarios that taught tactical thinking and quick decision-making from an early age. What humans called sports were actually conditioning exercises that prepared young predators for a lifetime of competition. Dr. Narai explained that human physical capabilities were the result of surviving on a world where weakness meant death. Their muscle density was 3 times higher than most species could achieve, even with artificial enhancement. Their bone structure could withstand impacts that would shatter alien skeletons, and their reaction times were measured in milliseconds. The cardiovascular system of a human could pump blood through arteries under pressure that would burst the hearts of most galactic species. Their lungs could process oxygen from atmospheres that were toxic to other life forms, and their digestive systems could break down substances that were literally poisonous to alien biology. But the most terrifying aspect of human evolution was their brains. The neural pathways had been optimized for split-second decision-making in life or death situations. Human minds could process combat data and tactical information faster than most military computers, while simultaneously planning multiple contingency strategies. General Wanho took the stage next to explain human military doctrine to an audience that was already reeling from the biological revelations. What aliens called impossible tactics were simply the natural result of training soldiers who had been raised in an environment where hesitation meant immediate death. Human military training started in childhood with games and sports that taught coordination, balance, and competitive thinking. By the time they reached military age, humans had already spent years learning to move, fight, and think like warriors. Most alien species began military training as adults and never developed the instinctive responses that humans considered normal. The weapons technology was another shock to the alien representatives. Humans had designed their tools of war to function in the same hostile environment that had shaped their evolution. Human weapons worked in extreme temperatures, could function underwater or in vacuum, and were built to be operated by beings with superhuman strength and reflexes. What terrified the aliens most was that humans were still holding back their true capabilities. The 3 years of galactic war had been fought with export versions of human military equipment designed for use by weaker species. The weapons that humans actually used to fight each other were far more deadly than anything they had deployed against alien forces. Dr. Narai displayed recordings of human military exercises that showed soldiers performing feats that alien warriors could not match even while wearing powered armor. Human infantry could march for days without rest, carry equipment loads that would cripple most species, and fight effectively in environments that would kill their enemies just by existing. The tactical doctrine was equally alien to galactic military thinking. Humans planned for massive casualties and continued fighting even when their forces were reduced to a fraction of their original strength. Most alien armies surrendered when they lost 20% of their forces, but humans had won battles after losing 90% of their troops. General Wanho explained that human strategy was based on the assumption that war was a natural state, and peace was just a temporary pause between conflicts. This mindset was incomprehensible to species that had evolved in stable environments where cooperation was more important than competition. The psychological profiles were the final nail in the coffin of alien resistance. Humans formed emotional bonds with their fellow soldiers that made them willing to die for each other, but they also possessed a cold, calculating intelligence that could make tactical decisions based purely on mathematical probability. When Dr. Narai finished her presentation, the chamber was silent as thousands of alien minds struggled to process what they had learned. They were not fighting another civilization. They were fighting the end result of the most hostile evolutionary pressure cooker in the known galaxy. The humans sitting in the diplomatic section looked exactly like the monsters that Dr. Narai had described, but they also looked like beings who might be reasoned with. The contradiction was maddening to alien minds that could not understand how such perfect predators could also be capable of mercy and cooperation. Ambassador Jiwan watched the alien faces around her and saw the exact moment when they finally understood what they had been fighting. The fear was still there, but it was mixed with something new, a grudging respect for beings who had survived impossible odds and emerged as the ultimate winners. The galaxy had spent 3 years learning to fear humanity, but now they were beginning to understand that this fear might be the key to their own survival. The universe was full of threats that their peaceful evolution had never prepared them to face, and they had just discovered the perfect allies. The meeting was about to take a turn that no one had expected, as both sides realized that the greatest threat to galactic civilization might not be the humans after all.